Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. This fella. I asked him his age the other day, and I don't think he liked that. Today I have 15 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. How would you feel if a tornado spoke to you? Case file number 2739, written by Bitmush. When the sky sent me a message. One spring afternoon, in about 2013, there had been tornadoes in Oklahoma in the morning. Being in southwest Missouri, I was looking towards the skies for any exciting-looking clouds. I think we were under a tornado watch. The local news had told of one tornado in Oklahoma that had destroyed the attics of several homes and lofted material way up into the atmosphere and was caught in upper-level winds, with some pieces of roofing falling and paper landing here in Springfield, Missouri. As I walked down our street, about 5 houses away from home, I saw something tumbling down out of the increasingly gnarly-looking sky. It came down a few yards away, and I leaned over into the yard to grab it. It was a piece of paper about 1 inch by inch. A neatly cut piece of page from some kind of school textbook. The cut had been through a paragraph, so it was only portions of sentences, but the words were, "and causes hot air to rise. The formation of tornadoes." I honestly thought I was losing my mind. I kept it with me for many years, until it disintegrated. It sounds just as ridiculous every time I retell the story, and I don't know what it means. Were the gods trying to warn me, protect me? If, after a tornado, I pick up a leaflet, or a book, or a page, or anything that resembles or has relevance to the tornado, I would start to question things, yeah. Is it a message from the developers, simulations, my personal guardian angel? I don't know. But I think it does apply to me, because I'm the type that would go after, and I'm not a tornado hunter or storm chaser, like in the movie Twister. Those guys had a good job, though. A very intense job. Yeah, probably shouldn't go down that route. I'll stick to reading stories. Case file number 2740, written by The Fractal Potato. Just me, a sandwich, and a fatty mystery. On a Wednesday night, I made myself a chicken sandwich, heated up the breaded chicken in the air fryer, toasted the bun, had some crisp lettuce, and my favorite part, a ton of mayo. Opened the jar of mayo and we were just about empty. I got what I could out of the jar with a skinny spatula, threw the empty jar out, and grabbed an unopened backup jar from the pantry. Opened the new jar, and tried to tear the cardboard protective seal thing off with my teeth. But I've been having issues with my teeth lately, and it started to hurt. I thought to myself, "Hey, stupid, watch your teeth." So I grabbed a steak knife, stabbed under the cardboard lid in the middle, and dragged the knife towards the edge. I lifted the lid with the knife, but then the entire thing didn't come off in one piece. I had to grab the other section off with my fingers. Slathered on the rest of my mayo, cleaned up the counter, and enjoyed my sandwich. Nom nom nom. The next night, Thursday night, my son wants some fish sticks. I don't have any tartar sauce on hand, but no prob, I'll just make some. I go into the fridge to grab the almost full jar of mayo that's in there, but I can't find it for the life of me. What the heck? Oh, no? Don't tell me my dumb butt got distracted and put the mayo back in the cabinet instead of the fridge? I check the cabinet, and sure enough, there's the jar of mayo sitting on the shelf. Great. What a waste of money. That jar was brand new. Not to mention, I already threw the fish sticks in the air fryer. I figured, I'll take a look at the mayo. Maybe it's not too bad. I open the jar. The jar is sealed shut. I'm looking at a never-opened jar of mayo. What the actual fluck? I rapidly replay the last night's events back in my head. I emptied 1 jar of mayo and grabbed the unopened new jar from the pantry. I vividly remember feeling the discomfort on my tooth when I tried to rip it off with my teeth and switching to grabbing a knife. I even remember getting a little bit of mayo on my hand when I ripped off the bit of lid that was still stuck to the jar and licked it off. But I'm staring here at an unopened jar? I looked in the fridge in case I missed the newly opened jar, and this was just a backup jar that I also missed? Nope. I look in the garbage and see nothing crazy, but I decide to dig around a little bit to see if I can find anything. Then I saw the ripped lid of the mayo jar and holy hell, I suddenly fell faint. I pick up the garbage ripped lid and compare it to the sealed mayo jar lid. They are the same print. Then I look some more in the garbage and I find the empty jar of mayo. None of this makes any sense. I remember running out of mayo when making my sandwich. I remember grabbing a new jar from the pantry, opening it, trying to bite the lid and thinking better of it, ripping the lid off, tasting the mayo. But here I am looking at an empty jar, a ripped lid, and a sealed jar that I just grabbed, but no open container of mayo with a little gone from the top, from when I made my sandwich yesterday. What the hell? I don't ever leave big remnants of lids on jars either. It's like an OCD thing. I like the entire lid removed from a jar, so it's not like I would have left some lid on there for a long time before I emptied it, and then took that lid part off just now and forgot I did it or something. So the ripped off lid from a new jar is in the garbage, but a sealed jar is all that I have around me? I took a picture to see if what I was seeing was actually seeing. I was. I just can't explain this, guys. Something crazy happened, and a couple of months ago, my son was in a bad car accident. He'll be okay, but was in the hospital for 2 weeks, still in recovery and needs another surgery, but ultimately, he'll be okay. But there are moments I almost feel the presence of other timelines where he didn't survive, and I'm living a completely different life. This Mayo thing almost seems to fall in line with that. So I too share that OCD about the remnants of the lid being left on. Like, you don't have to take it off, but I have to. Opening my vitamin D supplements, if I have to break it all off, because if not, it's not right. It's not perfect. It has to be perfect. But yeah, this is clear evidence of multiverse DOP. In a different universe, your Mayo was stolen and transported over here. I don't know why, but it was. The lid evidence in the garbage can means this switcheroo happened after the fact. So you, in that universe, had an unopened jar that was switched with the opened one, so he was like, what the hell? Did I open this? I never opened it. Wonder if they switched positions the same position, though. Yours went back in the shelf. Did yours that went to his universe go into the fridge, or was it opened but still in the pantry, so expired? Hopefully it was in the fridge in his universe, too. Case file number 2741, written by Mummy to 4. Sirens, Mayhem, and one man reading a book. When my country experienced a massive earthquake that took lives, I had a newborn and 3-year-old at the time, and was at my parents' house alone when the quake hit. Dad had a lot of old carpentry tools, bricks, and other relics along the shelves. They were in the lounge above me. They all fell down during the violent shaking. I was thrown off my chair onto the floor. My daughter was in her bouncer beneath me, and I crawled over to pull my son from the other side of the floor where he was playing with his cars under me till the shaking stopped. As soon as the earth settled, I picked up my son, carried the bouncer, and ran out into the street. There were alarms going off, people running, cars speeding, and just mayhem everywhere. Oddly, a man walked past me nonchalantly, reading a book as if nothing had happened. My neighbor took me into her undamaged house until my mom came running past, and we waited there for several hours until my dad got home from work. Traffic was horrific for obvious reasons. To assess the house for structural damage, my dad was a builder. The house was habitable, but a write-off through insurance. What was the most surreal was Dad had taken a photo of the lounge that late afternoon after the quake. Where I was sitting, most of the tools had fallen down onto the chair, and if the force of the quake hadn't thrown me off, I would have been killed. My daughter was lying in her bouncer, and she had a clear circle where no tools had landed on the floor, and my son was also in another blank spot where he was clear of any falling tools and debris. Literally every other part of the floor had something on it. We were so fortunate. It's bordering on impossible. Also, Dad never put anything dangerous on the shelves again. Case file number 2742, written by Arlen Roy. One gust, one ladder, one insane save. Years ago, I used to do side jobs for extra money, painting, handyman stuff, build decks, etc. I had a side job painting a water tower about 30 feet tall, probably 10 feet in diameter. I had a buddy and his son helping, getting them a little extra money too. So we're out there on a Sunday morning. It's spring. North Texas weather in spring is crazy. You can legitimately have all 4 seasons in a day. It was a little warm, sunny, but you could see a dark cloud in the distance. Wind starts picking up, gets a little cool, a few raindrops, then we start getting gusts. So I try to finish this small section, hoping the rain doesn't fluck it all up. Now it's really windy, and I'm about 15 feet in the air on a ladder. So I start trying to go down. Whoosh, a giant gust hits me. The ladder was briefly airborne. It was an extra wide extension, so I was able to turn around on it, thinking I might jump off. As it's tipping over, I'm basically running down it, like my weight, the angle, the speed of the fall, everything was timed perfectly. I literally ran down a ladder and got to the bottom as it hit the ground. My buddy's son said something like, "Holy fuck, that was some Jackie Chan crap." I am a marginally athletic, average-sized white dude, nothing special, and I was in my early 30s, way past any reflex prime. It was just luck. In another universe, I fell off and broke my neck, but that day, science was on my side. Yeah, so ladders are no joke. Even if you have a guardian angel watching out for you when it gets stormy, be careful. I had to pop a siding back on the house, and just going up like halfway. Man, there's some terror involved in that. I don't know how those construction workers that are hundreds of feet up, yeah, they're harnessed, but still, I could never do that. And I've jumped out of a plane, but it's different when you're very high up with the parachute. It doesn't feel as scary as when you're high up, but not that high up. You can still kind of see the ground. Case file number 2743, written by Penny Roll Wen, 1970. Last place, first cup. Where I live, there is a castle just down the road. The lord of the area still lives there. He's a bit younger than me, and our sons attended the local state primary school together and became friends. I became friends with his dad. He's a normal bloke, just knows who his ancestors were for 800 years. He gets invited to a lot of stuff, and was invited to take part in a local regatta in a rowing race. There would be him, the invitee, and he needed 2 more rowers. It was a paired relay. He asked me if I would do it. I said I would, but explained that I sail but don't really row. That was fine, it was just for fun. Another rower was found. We were to row the first leg together. The other rower and I only met on the evening of the race, and it wasn't until we were on the water that I realized he was taking this seriously. Bless him, he soon had to temper his expectations when he saw how bad I was. He made no fuss at the change in approach, but coached me along. We came in last for the changeover. It turned out that this guy was a gold medalist in the British Rowing Championships. The second leg didn't go any better. Our other pair were also very amateur, and we were competing with, obviously enough, seasoned rowers. We were last by a long way. We stayed for the presentation of cups. The Lord Mayor of the town was presenting these. By chance, his wife had previously been my teaching assistant, and there was a cup for the first boat that entered from a local town, not the town where the regatta was. There was only one boat from there, us. So let me repaint this picture. There I was with the Lord of a realm, a British gold medalist, and a local historian, being presented with a cup, despite coming dead last, by the wife of the Lord Mayor, who had previously been my teaching assistant, for rowing, my first time in about 20 years. Not my usual day. Hard to believe it happened and wasn't a dream. Well, they say that reality is stranger than fiction, or in this case, even dreams. Yeah. I don't know how I would feel after the fact of something so extraordinary happening. Now, is this a glitch? Probably not. It probably is just a really extraordinary coincidence, but there's so many more coincidences in today's video. Things that I don't think are just coincidences. I guess sometimes they are. Maybe this one is, but still incredible. Case file number 2744. Written by Cold Speculum. I'll never be able to unsee it. A neighboring old lady came over and asked, "Want to see something?" I said yeah, and she told me to grab my keys. It's late at night already, but I just shrugged and got my keys, and she met me at my car. She gave me directions to a farm with a fenced area with about 80 to 100 cows. We stand outside the fence, and she keeps looking at her watch. At this point, I was sure I was going to get murdered. But what happened next, still can't explain it. One by one, all 80 to 100 cows knelt down. They stayed that way for maybe a solid minute or two, and then just got up and started roaming around all normal again. She got back in the car, and after I picked up my jaw, I got in and we drove home silently. When we pulled in, I asked her what the hell I just saw. She made the motion of zipping her lips and throwing away the key. I went back to the farm several times alone and never saw anything out of the ordinary. I even spoke to an employee for the property and probably looked like a complete psychopath asking the questions I was. She refused to acknowledge anything. This was over 25 years ago, and I still think about it. You have snake whisperers, and now you have old lady cow whisperers. So is that her gimmick? Her superpower that she was born with is the ability to control cows and make them kneel on command. What would you do if that was your power? I mean, you can't really advertise it because the government would still try to study you. Like, do you have a telepathic link to animals or something? You'd still want to use it at times. I guess you'd have to do it in private. And she's nearing the end of her life, I'm guessing, and she wanted to show off to someone, which fair enough, I would too. Case file number 2745, written by Let's Talk D. A thunderclap, a boss fight, and a grand reveal. My experience was in a clan on an online game for people of a particular political persuasion. The nature of the clan means it's very niche with a small active member base. At the time of this incident, we probably had about 20 to 30 active members. A good friend of mine in the clan was from Finland. They had joked in the past that no other Finn would join as any who play the game did not have that politics. Well, we were super excited one day when someone else joined from Finland. A few days later, I went on a boss killing trip with the two of them. We're all in a voice call when suddenly, they both make frightened noises. I asked them what that was about, and they told me it was lightning. I said it was weird they both heard it at the same time, as I hadn't heard anything through the headset, which might suggest they were both near the same lightning. Well, they start asking each other questions about where they live, what city, oh cool, me too, what district, etc. Getting more and more specific each time. Eventually, it got to the point where they worked out that they were not only in the same building, not only the same floor, but they were fucking next door neighbors. They had zero awareness of each other before joining this tiny internet space, and the lightning hitting during this raid was a catalyst to bring them together. Case file number 2746, written by Frogs Eating Soup. Of all the benches in all the cities. I had just been dumped by my college boyfriend at the time, while we were at this large outdoor bar area. I ran away to sit on a bench across the street, and proceeded to bawl my eyes out. My parents happened to be in town for the football game that day, so I called them to come get me. As I'm sitting there crying, some lady comes up to ask if I'm okay, and gets some paper towels from a nearby restaurant to blow my nose in. I'm crying so bad I don't even really look at her face. She gets back shortly before my parents pull up. She's on one side of me, and my mom is on the other, both trying to console me. Then I hear, lady's name? My mom's name. My name. It was my mom's aunt, who lived 8 hours away from the city we were currently in. She was visiting her son and happened to see me on the corner crying. She told her husband, I just really feel like we need to stop and help this girl right now. And it ended up being me. Either the craziest coincidence of all time or an act of God. So an act of God, guardian angels, a simulation, whatever it is, there was a connection from her to you. What could stimulate that connection? It can't be subconscious processing because there's no information to draw from. So it had to have been imposed upon the person who felt it. Now, you can just say it's a coincidence, and if that's where you want to leave it, that's fine, but I do think it's more than that. Case file number 2747, written by Blunderbuster Rhymes, AIM, Ancestry, and Mike. In the early 2000s, I was IMing a friend of mine named Mike, who has a really unique last name. my name is really unique too. We had been having brief chats for months on AIM, saying things like, "See you at Pete's this weekend," "Are you going to Sarah's next week?" "See you at the barbecue," etc. We were making plans for the weekend. I made a reference to his friend, Croffy, and suddenly Mike doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. Croffy is Mike's best friend. I think Mike is joking around, and I start asking him other questions. He's getting annoyed that I keep talking about this Croffy person, and I'm starting to get annoyed that Mike is dragging out this joke for so long. After about an hour and a half of back and forth, we realize that we do not know each other at all, even though we have been chatting on AIM for over a year, making weekend plans. Turns out Mike lives 1,000 miles away and is friends with the only other person in the world with my name. When I had originally added him on Instant Messenger, I had mistyped my friend's email address, and this Mike's email was one letter different from my real friend's email. What was also a long series of uncomfortable coincidences was that when we would make weekend plans, our lives were similar enough that we never caught on that we were talking to the wrong person until I mentioned Croffy, even though I lived in a huge city and Mike lived in North Dakota. What's also weird is my last name is so unique that everyone in the US with my last name descends from the same 4 people who immigrated to the US in the early 1900s. So I have to be distantly related to the guy that other Mike was friends with. It was spooky to the point of being upsetting, and we never IM'd again. I grew up in the US and don't live there anymore. A few years ago I got a bunch of emails from some other friend of his saying, "Dude, how long have you been living in Australia? I just bumped into you last week." Because he had Googled my name and I came up instead of his friend. Yeah, I don't know what this is exactly, the relation to names being so incredibly uncommon. But as is the theme with this video, it's just all coincidences. Things that can't align so perfectly, or at least they can't always just be coincidences. Is someone pulling the strings, making, not a prank, but something incredible happen? Case file number 2748, written by Majestic Pen 8800. Forgotten book, and a random chimney. Okay, so it didn't happen to me. It happened to an old school friend from Wigan, who I'm still in touch with. In the late 1980s, there was a school trip organized, and back in the day, if it was an expensive trip, you would have to pay in book, and you would take your installments to the teacher, who'd take the cash and then sign the book. I should add at this point that my friend is incredibly dull, and there is no way that she would have made this up. She has got a distinctive but not unique surname, and thus her name was written on the front of her book, which was one of those small notebooks in the style of those issued by the UK government stationery supplier of the day, Banner. So the trip occurred, and once done, the book was thrown into the rubbish bin and forgotten about. Fast forward to the last few years, and one day, my friend's mom, who is a teacher in Liverpool, was presented with a book by one of her students. The reason being that it bore the same unusual surname as my friend and her mom. Apparently, they had been taking out a chimney in the student's house, and behind the old fireplace, they found a book with the aforementioned name on it. On close examination, it was clear that it was in fact the paying book from the 1980s school trip. Case file number 2749, written by Ziski843. Hot Wheels, cold case. As a first-generation immigrant to the United States, my earliest memories here date back to the early 90s, when my parents and I arrived. I was just 4 years old, and we had very little. My dad cleaned pools, and most of my toys were hand-me-downs left behind by other children. Among these, I recall a collection of toy cars, though I never pinpointed a favorite at the time, around 1992-1994. As I grew older, I assume my parents donated these toys, likely in the mid to late 90s. Fast forward to 2017. At 29, my long-term girlfriend, now my wife and the mother of our beautiful baby, and I finally bought our first house. We were thrilled. Having rented only 1.5 miles away, we'd spend the past week moving everything into the garage and living room. While cleaning up some overlooked spots, we moved the large sectional couch the previous owners had left for us. As we pulled it back, there it was, The exact toy car I'd owned when I was 4 or 5. Decades had passed since I'd last thought of it, but the memory instantly flooded back. It was my favorite because it sat higher than the other cars, allowing it to roll across the carpet more smoothly. The family who lived there before us had 2 children, whom I believe were older, perhaps 7 and 10. What are the chances that this was the only toy left behind? What are the odds that these kids would be playing with such an old, obscure toy car? I looked it up. It was produced in 1984. While it was random for me to be playing with it a decade after its release, it was truly extraordinary for these kids to be playing with it nearly 40 years after it was made. Though it was mass-produced, it wasn't on the scale we see today. I know it's not a uniquely rare toy car, but the probability of this happening is simply incredible. I still have it and always keep it, as it remains such a bizarre occurrence. You just have an entire ensemble today. So, when I go hunting for stories, I do try to push a theme, but it's more subtle usually. This one today is just so overt, and I didn't really intend for that, so another coincidence in just the structuring of the stories. Case file number 2750, written by Vitamin PK. The beer rage unleashed a hidden relic. It was about 2001, and I had just gotten off a long, frustrating shift working as a server at TGI Fridays. All I wanted to do was relax and eat my dinner in front of the TV once I got home. My roommate already had a 6-pack of Bud Light when I walked in through the door and sat down on the couch. He started on his 7th beer and was drunk and wanted to engage, but I was exhausted. He started to poke me and tease me, but I was having none of that. In a fit of rage, I picked up the 6-pack by the ring of the missing beer and slammed it on the ground. However, when I lifted the beers up in the air, one of them catapulted behind me into the front doorway and into the wall. After the rage subsided, instantly from the sound of a can going into the wall, my friend and I made peace. He said later that I should check out what I had done to the wall. I went over to check out the damage, and the beer can was on the ground, scrunched, swollen, and not open. There were bits of wall all over the floor. I cleaned it up and we had to laugh at the can, sharing all weird things like that, and wondered why it hadn't exploded. Here's where the weird part happens, though. I got some supplies to fix the hole, and was pulling out the extra broken pieces of the wall when I noticed something metallic in the hole in the wall where the beer can hit. I started pulling some broken pieces of wall out to figure out what the metallic thing was. I pulled it out with some pliers, and lo and behold, it was another can. An old 80s Shasta can, to be exact. Someone had made a hole in the wall exactly where I had made one, with the beer can, and they had plastered over the hole using a Shasta can as a filler for the plaster to stick to. What are the odds? Now, the question is, are there other cans of beer scattered throughout the walls of that apartment? That'd be funny. Probably best not to try to examine that because they're not really worth anything, but it's a cool little Easter egg peppered about the apartment. Case file number 2751, written by Northern Overthinker. Out of all the car dealerships. About 10 years ago, my husband and I made friends with another couple on holiday. They were also from the UK, but they lived all the way down south, and my husband and I are up north, so about 5 or 6 hours apart. We met on a day trip, got chatting, and spent most of the day together. Said goodbye at the end of the day, and that was that. A few weeks after we got back home, I started a new job in a car dealership, and who were the first people to walk through the door on my first day? The couple was on holiday. Turns out their son attended a university close by, and they had come up to visit him, but they were waiting for him to leave to have a break in lectures, so just decided on a whim to come and look at some cars. So many different decisions that had to align to make that car dealership meeting happen. It makes me feel funny if I think about it for too long. Case file number 2752, written by Sabajenza. My deceased dog emerged from the fog. Context. I was still living with my parents and a girlfriend. We used to sleep in the back room with the window looking out to the backyard. I had a dog that was terminally ill. One of the symptoms was she used to get up and drink constantly, often until she threw up. Every night, we'd hear her walk across the porch and drink. Okay, so for obvious reasons, we had to put my dog down. Now the story. The night after my dog was put down, my girlfriend and I would still hear doggy footsteps on the porch and drinking sounds. It was faint, and we would hear it at different times. Subtle enough for us to both think it was just a phantom sound. Fast forward a few days, and it was a soccer World Cup. I live in Australia, so the games were on extremely early, 4 a.m. My work colleagues wanted to all watch the Aussie game together, so we decided to meet up at work early and watch it. This meant I was leaving for work early. It was unusually foggy that morning. So foggy I couldn't see the garage on the other side of the backyard. As I got into the garage, I felt something bump my leg. It took me by surprise, but was only soft. Then I felt another push. This time I almost fell over. I looked down and my dog is staring back up at me, emaciated, covered in dirt, but wagging its tail and happy to see me. My brain completely broke. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Had my dog dug itself out of a grave to say goodbye? No, of course not. But this was really happening. She was jumping on me. Apparently, while I was thinking all this, trying to process, I was also involuntarily making a weird wailing noise, loud enough that my girlfriend and mom came outside to see what was going on. This confirmed it was really happening, as they also burst out in tears and completely freaked out. Conclusion. So after everything settled down, it turned out that unbeknownst to me, my dog had a doppelganger about 15 houses down from me. Exact same markings, just a lot thinner. Apparently, she dug her way out of the property and escaped the night my dog was put down. She was living under our house, and the noises we heard were literally her moving around. That morning, she had come out into the fog to greet me. I've been mugged, traveled, and had countless experiences since then, but that was the only time I can truly say my mind snapped. I literally just made a weird whine noise because I couldn't comprehend how this supernatural event was happening before my eyes. Literally could not process. So even knowing the explanation doesn't make it any less difficult to process. I mean, I think your dog had to have his soul transposed, or at least part of it, influenced the other dog because it was 15 houses away. Why would it come exactly to yours? So soon after, too. No, there had to be a soul that was infused and drawn in to your location because of the love that your deceased dog had. And dogs are so loyal, it's incredible. Case file number 2753, written by Dan Andriano's Hat. The rock and roll cleric who never gave up the dream. When I was about 16, my then girlfriend and I were walking through a shopping center and passed by this guy who was sitting at a table collecting for some charity. He had long white hair and was probably in his 60s. He stopped me and told me that I looked like I played guitar, had long hair and did in fact play guitar, just like every teenage metalhead in 2000s, and that he was looking to start a band. He said that I had the look he was looking for, and he took out a binder from his bag full of old photographs of him in an Ozzy Osbourne tribute band that he sang in years ago. I gave him my number. I shouldn't have, but I was awkward and bemused, and went on my way. Later that night, I was telling my girlfriend's dad, who had been singing in a tribute band himself for years, about the encounter, and he said, "That sounds like Father Francis. He used to sing in tribute bands back in the day. His shtick was that he was a priest, and he would dress up in the whole getup and sing Aussie songs. I thought it was a pretty funny coincidence." Fast forward to a couple years ago. I'm living down the country, and I'm getting out of the car to go into the local supermarket, and a car pulls up behind me, and a guy calls out to me, "Hey, you look like Nicky Sixx from Motley Crue." I absolutely do not, by the way. "Do you play guitar?" It was Father Francis again. He didn't remember me, but stopped me for the same conversation twice, 15 years apart, in two completely different parts of the country. Turns out he was living in the same town that I moved to, and was still on the hunt for some band members. I met with him a few times after that for coffee, had some long, interesting phone conversations with him. He had a very interesting life, and gave him lyrics to some songs that he was trying to figure out by ear. I told him to call me whenever he gets the rest of the band together. I stopped hearing from him suddenly, and found out that he had passed away not long after that. So rest in peace, Father Francis. Thank you for the best small world story I'll ever have. This is just a fun story, even though it has a bittersweet ending. Yeah, okay, coincidences again, woohoo, yeah, sure, but it seems a bit more than that. It's like a connection between you and Francis, because you were engaging. I think if you had rejected his initial offering, it wouldn't have happened a second time. That acceptance forced the cosmic domino to fall in that direction. Now time for the jokes of the day. My wife begged, "Please stop introducing our kids as your godson." I'm like, sure, as soon as he stops doing unhinged crazy crap that has me screaming, "My God, son!" My daughter came to me worried today and said, "Dad, I'm so worried. Did you hear about the bombings?" I replied, "Bombings?" She said, "Yeah, I ran." I replied, "Well, I would run too if bombs were falling." She gave me the coldest dead-eye stare. It was great. I'm sure it was. What do you think, Dave? Would you run too? Yeah. We watched a documentary about U-Haul last night on Netflix. My wife didn't think it was that interesting. Me, I thought it was genuinely moving. Terrible news. I caught the peekaboo virus. Ended up in the ICU. I got arrested today for walking out of a museum with a painting. I was just so confused, because earlier when I asked if I could take a picture, he said yeah. If you want even more glitches and paranormal stories, up here is a compilation for the prior month, June 2025. And before you go, remember to like the video and subscribe. See you next time.